Thank you so much for joining me today, Michelle. How are you doing?
I'm great. As I just said, I landed in Michigan from LA, my home, about 25 minutes ago, and the sun was out and then it poured rain and now the sun is back. I mean, welcome to Michigan.
What a day to come to Michigan where it was downpouring.
hmm Yeah,
Absolutely downpouring.
yeah.
So thank you again for talking with us. We're so excited to see Keepers arrive at Tipping Point Theater. Um, Kind of what has been your process with the show? Because it sounds like it's spanned quite a bit of time here.
Yeah, it really did. So I'm a Michigander originally.
Well, welcome
And I
back.
went, yes, thank you, thank you. I went to University of Detroit Mercy and got
Okay.
my Bachelor of Fine Arts back in the 90s. The 90s. Um, and we had to do a solo show to graduate, and I did not. I don't know what I did, but I managed to sweet talk my way out of it, and I didn't do it. And I carried on with my life and have been pursuing, the professional career in acting, film, television, theater since then. Um, and moved to Chicago and then Los Angeles. But I have always had in the back of my mind, I didn't do that solo show. I need to do a
Okay.
solo show. So I've been carrying this like bucket list around with me forever. And so really it was just after sort of the pandemic, where, we all, if we choose to, sort of get to realign your values and what you want, what you really value, what matters, what doesn't. And for me, I sort of fell in love with acting again. And, because I live in LA, it's hard out there. It's hard
I can
out there.
imagine.
And so when I met with a coach and she said, okay, well, let's get some things on the board. And I said, well, I always wanted to do a solo show. And she goes, great, give me a date and pick a theater. And I was like, oh,
You're like, we're
and
doing
so,
this.
yeah, and so that was it. It was like line in the sand. And so that's what I did. I hired a director and started writing in 2023, and it took me a couple of months, and it was so hard. I made the process so hard. And I was like, how do what is this? This is just a jumble. And there was a friend of mine, a very popular solo artist, and she said, you know what? It will speak to you and tell you what it's going to be, because at first it was just a bunch of stories and she said, what's the best time of your life? And I said, oh my gosh, summer camp at Camp Dearborn in Milford, Michigan. And oh my God. And I mean, I could literally burst into a million songs right now. And that was it. That was the frame. And so all of the stories that I had written, this timeline of my life, I was able to put in to camp. So the best part of my life, and I sort of lead the audience into, the challenging parts of my childhood and, in the end, why I am in fact a keeper.
Going back, it's interesting that they make you to graduate. You had to do a solo show, but I guess it's also like the ultimate challenge of acting in a way.
Yeah. Yeah, and I look back on it now, with my fresh adult eyes, and I didn't know, why I operated the way I operated. You're young and independent and life is, for living, baby, like I had no concept of how to really explore, any of the deeper work that you do as an adult. And you go, oh, I got that. That's trauma. Got it. Got it.
What I love, so my day job is a psychologist. So like what I love is that when this show came up and they were talking about it, I want to say it was the last show, Lungs, and they were kind of talking about it. They're kind of doing a little spiel, and I was like, this feels like it is the most therapeutic show I've ever heard of. Like, what better way to like put all your trauma on the table and then also get to heal from that, and hopefully other people can heal from that too.
Oh my gosh. And that's exactly the journey that it's been. Like, they sort of say with at least writing, like what's it about? What's it really about? You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like, is it an actress writing her, solo show? Sure. But is it really about, me being vulnerable and honest and sharing, parts of my life that people in the audience are like, me too, and it took on a life of its own, which I could have never predicted. And, I found, some, like I found an anti-bullying camp, which is a theme that comes up in the show in
Okay.
California, and I donated all my proceeds from a run that I did there to that. Like it keeps finding its audience. And I thought I was done with it. I had done a full run in 2023 and I put it
Okay.
away. I was like, and scene.
We've done that.
Yeah, I've done it. And very good friend of mine, Mary Jo Capone, who is an actor here in Michigan, and I believe on the board at Tipping Point.
Okay.
And she had put it in Julia's ear a couple of years ago. And so we in January we had the fires in California.
Yes.
I also had discovered I had thyroid cancer caught very quickly. So I had a partial thyroidectomy, and a week later we had all of these fires.
Oh my gosh.
And then like a week later, Julia like got a hold of me and was like, we'd like to put your show on. And I was like, my show about trauma? And and I was like, I said yes. And because that's sort of what I do when I'm really scared of something, I'm like, yes, of course, you know.
Which is beautiful because I feel like a lot of people, and myself included, when we're scared, we're more hesitant. And it sounds like you were very much like the this is the right time, right place to do the show.
Yeah. Well, I find like everything is on the other side of scared. You know what I mean? Like
Sure.
you keep coming up against the thing and, these will talk you out of everything,
Yeah.
and once you can push through it, you know what I mean? You're just going to be in such a different place. So yeah, I said yes. And I fought tooth and nail for the first several months of like, I don't want to on my show again. And then I got it back in my body. And because I had been removed from it for a year and a half, I could really look at it with fresh eyes and really just sort of fell in love with it again. And have been putting it back up and really discovering new things about it. So it's been really fun. I'm so glad I said yes.
So when you kind of do that, when you like you have a show
Hmm.
and you put it away and you kind of like you put it to bed, you're like it's done, and then you pull it back out. Does it like when you look at it through that new lens? Does it change? Does the process of it change at all?
Yes, new themes sort of popped out or
Okay.
things, like um I was talking to like a therapist about, we were talking about trauma. And, he goes, yeah, trauma is like circular, you know what I mean? So even though you've worked through things, which I have with Keeper, I'm on the other side of all of this, which is why I'm able to make art with it,
Sure.
and tell stories from it. But it's sort of like puddles, right? That are like serene, and then you start tapping them, you know what I mean? And like new
Yeah.
things come up, and so rather than shy away from those new things, I'm like, yeah, okay, let's explore that. Let's look at what this looks like. So that to me is my challenge as an artist and a performer, you know.
I feel like that has to like as a psychologist, I would say that when you return to therapy, you almost do. I use this word loosely, but like re-traumatize yourself. Like when you have to
Yeah.
like you're picking at those scabs again. Like I like how you said it, it's like the dribble of the water. Like that. That there's a beauty to that. But there is a moment where like those ripples, you have to decide of like how much exposure of that feels good. What like where does it lie? And so that again had to be a quite a heavy experience, especially after, like you said, thyroid cancer, after the fires, to re-explore all of that.
Yeah, it really was, and what will happen for me is fear will pop back in. It's always fear, some sort of fear. And I will literally say, I can't do that. I can't do a solo show. And I'm like, okay, well, beg to differ. There's about 20 performances already, and here you can even watch one. And I'm like, yeah, like, so I have to constantly keep building myself up again, you know what I mean? And build my self confidence and remind myself because I will constantly revert to, I can't. But there's also a part of me that's like, I can do anything. So, it's the duality of, of humans, I guess. You know what I mean? Like, let's be safe. Let's jump out of a plane. You know what I mean?
For sure.
Yeah.
You're like I'm jumping out of the plane but safely. So I know we kind of talked a little bit about it, but just like what is keeper, like you're going back to almost your childhood, your teenage
Yeah.
years of life, is that correct?
Yes. It is, and it's so hard. It's always like, what is the log line, Michelle? And I'm always like, I don't know. Um, It's a coming of age story. You know what I mean? I start out and I'm 8 years old, and I sort of will toggle back and forth between 8, 16, and I start aging up all the way. I think the oldest I get in the show is 15.
Okay.
And then of course I'll pop in and out as like present day and sort of, wrap things up um but as I had mentioned, I use camp songs, and I'm painting this amazing picture for the audience of like what it was like, the freedom of youth camp. And there's no parents, and it is just like, for me, I mean, it was canoe trips and archery and riflery and trust balls. I mean, it was like just such a precious childhood,
Sure.
and you'll appreciate this as a psychologist. It wasn't until I had started like therapy. I never had went to a therapist. I'm an actor, your stage is therapy.
Right, right.
Um, I went to a therapist in my 40s, right when I had gotten pregnant. My son is now 11. And I would tell her, I'm telling stories about my childhood or whatever, and I sort of breeze through them, or the way that we do when we tell an often repeated story. And she's like, hold up, wait a minute, what? And so once I was like, oh, is that odd? Not everybody's dad wins the lottery? What? You know what I mean? Like,
Sure. Yeah.
oh, okay. I mean, very interesting things. And so once I started to explore them, I started to really realize there was a lot of pain. And it almost, what this show taught me is it's like the origin of where my self-worth was damaged, right?
Sure.
And I didn't even know it until I had written it and started working on it. And it's like, oh my gosh, that was it. And when you have that narrative, you build on it, whatever this misbelief about yourself is, this truth, and you carry that with you your whole life, unless somebody's like, oh, by the way, that's not true, or you don't have to carry that. You can put that down. You can
Yes.
let that go. And so that is what this show taught me. And it just keeps revealing itself in such a like just ways that make me feel like so proud as an artist, because it's like I'm getting back to this joyful part of my childhood, which is song and dance and freedom, you know what I mean? And yeah, that's all in the show. Happy accident.
I was gonna say I quite frequently have those moments with clients and stuff where it's just like they'll say something and I'll be like, let's talk about the fact that that's not normal. And they always have this like revelation of just being like we call it the lactose moment. It's kind of like when you figure out you're lactose intolerant, of just being like
Mm,
you didn't have an answer to it, but maybe it was always under the surface. And once you stop to reflect and you're like, oh, I've always laughed that off, or I've always
right,
tried to just, oh, it's not a big deal. And actually
right.
that is a big deal.
Yeah,
And that impacts all of us.
yeah,
Um, but I also love what you said there too, is it shows that healing doesn't have to happen at any age or stage or, and it's not always continuous.
right. And it's so interesting. A very good friend of mine, also an actor. I mean, being from Michigan, which is why I'm so grateful to bring my show back here again. Um, Michigan is where I earned my equity card, my SAG card. Like these are my people. Like I came up with, created art, and I mean, Michigan is full of creatives. There is something about this state, let me tell you. And, I mean, I could literally start naming off a billion artists, directors, films, and I'm like, yep, Michigan. Do you know Michigan? We're all in there. Um, Magic of the Midwest. But a friend of
Absolutely.
mine had used this word again in my early 40s, and she was saying something, and she just kept saying, well, that's my boundary. And I was like, what's a boundary? Like a
We're allowed to have
boundary?
those?
What? I mean, and stunned, I never really thought of it like that, and so I'm like, oh, like being an artist, I'm an empath, I'm all of these things, I have all of my emotions with me, but I I'm the boss of them. I don't have to just, put my bleeding heart everywhere. I can have a
Sure.
boundary.
Which is really hard, I would assume, as an actor, because especially in a show like this, you're putting yourself out there by yourself on a stage. every night doing it,
Yeah.
there's not a place to hide from that or from
No.
the crowd.
And I sort of wrote it in there, you know what I mean? Like I'm sort of like, I'm gonna trust fall and you'll catch me or you won't. You know what I mean? Like,
That's
you know,
beautiful.
it's it just kept again, I'm just like, who wrote this? This is good. It just keeps revealing itself, you know, and um yeah, I mean, being an actor, we like buy into trust right away. And it's
Sure.
not earned. We're just all agreeing that, okay, we're all buying this, um, story and we're all going to yes and it, you know. And oh man, I lost my train of thought. Sorry.
It's
My
okay.
jet lag just hit me. What was I saying? Rewind the tape.
it's I think that, like there's just this power to being vulnerable on stage is kind of what we're talking about, and
Yes.
that's scary, but that's also empowering, I would assume.
Yes. And I've always enjoyed like um I do a lot of like emotional work. Oh, okay. So I was talking about being an actor, so we buy
Yes.
into the same circumstances, right? So we trust right away,
Right.
but it's not earned. It's not, we're all just, playing make believe and agreeing to the rules, right?
Sure.
And, as artists, it's really fun to be able to do that,
For sure.
but you realize like in your real life, you know, that's not how everybody operates. You know what I
Sure.
mean? People have boundaries. People have, you know what I mean? They're reserved. They're not willing to talk about the scariest thing in the world, like you are, Michelle. You know what I mean? They're not just going to whip out, some trauma or shame,
Sure.
you know?
For
And
sure.
I didn't really realize that not everybody was so accessible to that. And I know that sounds so like, naive, I guess. But I didn't I didn't really think about it. I'm just like, oh, everybody's like that, right? And the therapist was like, no, no. I keep wanting people to get in touch with their feelings. And I'm like, oh, I have all of my feelings everywhere with me. So it's fun to channel it and put it into its container and take the audience on the ride with me. And and I've learned, I'm not responsible for that. All I can do is what I do and tell, be as honest and vulnerable and joyful as I can. Whether somebody's with me on the ride or not is not that's not my business. I
You know,
hope they
I
are.
I will say this: you're probably the dream client for therapy, that you are open about your emotions, because
Yeah.
it is true. We actually are socialized as humans to people don't want to know about your emotions. Like, especially in the Midwest, as I'm sure you know, when someone says, "How are you doing?" you're just supposed to say, "Oh, things are great, things are fine." Maybe a non-committal answer.
Yeah.
And so that you would be, it sounds like you maybe would be someone's like, "Hey, I'm not doing great," and people wouldn't know what to do with that.
Yeah. It's
But that's good though. That's actually good, because that means that you are communicating about those emotions, and probably makes for a much more real story for keepers, and everybody being able to kind of reflect with that. Even if they can't talk about it, they can see you talking about it. And
Right.
with the dynamics of a theater, that's easier to have it reflected at you, and then you can go home and think about it on yourself.
Right, right. And there's themes in the show, there's abandonment that I talk about, there's bullying that has happened, there's a mother-daughter bond in there. Um, these, big sort of like themes that sort of happened in my life. Um, I lost my train of thought again. My goodness.
We were talking about like being able to reflect and then go home and think about it, like the
Oh,
audience reaction.
right. And it's exactly that. Bullying, I talk a little bit in my bullying story about like skipping lunch because lunch was a really dangerous place. And so I would hide in the locker room and I didn't have food. And because I was a latchkey kid, I ate in a lunch line. Like there was no vending machines back in the last century. Um, you know, and I would I'd go through the lockers and like take people's like lunch, and it was like that hit me when I was writing and it was like I had forgotten, you know what I mean? Like as I was exploring the bullying year again. And like the audience members over time, like that would be the one thing that somebody would zero in on and go, me too. Me too. I
Right.
had that happen. You know what I mean? Like I didn't have, like food. I was a latchkey kid. I didn't have, you know what I mean? And it was like, I could have never anticipated that, like, and whether they were male or female, my bullies happened to be females. And this one audience member in particular was a male, and he came up to me after and sort of shared that, like, and I was like, yes, we all create these stories for ourselves, or we all have this shame, or to be able to even identify it as shame,
Sure.
and like, do you have to carry that with you your whole life, And that was what happened, to bring this sort of back around is what if I put this shame down? What if I have shared it? I know where it came from. What if I'm done with it? Who can I be now that I'm on the other side of it? You know what I mean? And I think that that's a really powerful, message for people, because we don't have to carry it with us forever, right?
No, but and we do though, and it's very isolating because like you talked about the eating like by yourself at lunch, and it clicked in. I was like, I remember a year where I did that, and like I went to a classroom with a teacher, and I became best friends with that teacher,
Right.
and it's something that I don't talk about. I think this might be the first time I'm talking about it publicly everywhere. So
See what
like,
happens?
but that is it's nice to be able to see that and be like, oh, maybe I'm not so alone in this. Like we've all had some version of that, and while it again puts you in a very vulnerable spot because you're sharing it your story, it is connecting it with other people, and they can maybe have their own healing process from that.
Absolutely. And that is something that just keeps walloping me in the face about this show. You know what I mean? Because I'm like, that wasn't my intention. Like, I'm gonna, make this thing and bring out, that's not for me to do. But to be on the receiving end of that, I mean, even to receive your truth right now, like to me, that is the joy of creativity and art and like truly living in the moment, Like
Absolutely.
you can share that, you know what I mean? And if you started to explore that more, because I love even as you talk about it, like a teacher meant something so special to you, right?
Yep.
Because they were the one that was there, you know what I mean? Like that's fascinating. So even though you had this trauma, there was still one anchor there that made you feel safe,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, while you're kind of going through the show, or like as you're like pulling it back out, you're getting ready to put it on at tipping point. Do you ever find that like it impacts your mental health? As a therapist, I have to ask. Like, do you see like as you're like going through a scene, and you're just like, maybe I need to take a moment and step back and like reflect and breathe during this, or set it aside for a moment?
That's such a good question. So I am the kind of person that has all of my emotions like if somebody was like burst into tears, I'm like, gotcha. Like that's where they're at, right?
Okay.
And then I'm like, is that okay? Is that normal? What is that? Like I
It's
know
healthy
I
to have your emotions.
I mean, I use it, in my art, this kind of thing. But I talk about it in the show. I sort of I make reference to shoving it all down. You shove it all down, right? And in reference to the show and in my, thought process, like it's gonna find its way out. You know what I
Sure.
mean? It's gonna find its way out. And typically it finds its way out in ways that don't even, it's always at the wrong person, it's at the wrong time, it doesn't make sense, you're just pressing things down. And so I talk about it in the show about I'm not going to shove things down anymore. So if it hits me in the show, like I will still, like I'll just burst into tears,
Okay.
but it's my body's reaction. You know what I mean? It's not me as the actor going, boy, I'm gonna get you here. Look at me. And I'm not gonna shove that down in this particular show. And I make a conscious choice to do that. Because I think it's really valuable, I think, to see um, real emotion, because we do always keep things shoved down or, not appropriate to, burst
Mhm.
into tears at Rite Aid or what. whatever you're, you know.
What? It's not?
No, or everybody's like,
Yeah,
oh. Um, so yeah, in particular in this show, if it hits me, and it's still, I mean, there's still lines that when I say them every time they hit me in a different way, and
sure.
they still, and I'll fight through it. And the interesting thing about that is, I did this show in LA at the Hollywood Fringe. So it ran, it had its nice little run. It was part of a festival. It was really a cool experience. And, it was reviewed a bunch. And I remember I got the most beautiful review from some, you know what I mean? It was like somebody very clearly that was like, yes, you are my spirit animal. I feel
Yes.
you. And then in turn, another review, the exact same show. This person said, I'm a little worried about her. Like, you know what I mean? Is this something that she's worked through? You know?
Oh,
And I
wow.
thought it was so fascinating to me. I'm grateful for that review because I go, I couldn't have done anything differently. This person was like, I loved it. I love what you did. This person was like, that was a lot that you shared. You know what I mean? So, what do I do with that?
Right. I mean, it shows you exactly what mindsets they're in, and probably going back to what you said about shoving it down, the person who didn't understand it is probably used to shoving it down, in a way of like, these are not emotions that we express. These are not things that we
Right,
go through. And so
right.
that almost felt foreign, of like a performance of just like, what is Michelle doing on stage there?
And that, um, it's just me. And
Hmm.
it's literally like jumping out of an airplane. It really was this, and I have jumped out of an airplane, by the way. Like it, you just have, you are leaping. And, it's sort of the beauty of live theater. You know what I mean? You just open your mouth and, dear Lord, please let the right words come out. Um, you know,
Right,
um,
absolutely.
But yeah, like once I start firing, it just charges, and so when I work on this show, it's like cardio, it's singing, it's all of this so that I, the professional actor part of myself can deliver a really good show the way that I want to deliver it, doing my vocal lessons, like all of those things.
Sure.
And yes, to your original point, yeah, making sure that my mental health is, being taken care of. And
Sure.
absolutely, like this time around, I started to work with a different therapist, who added, because the past, I've handled the past, you know what I mean?
Sure.
Like
Hmm.
I'm not there anymore, but I'm living my life right now. And I'm like, what are my new tools? And, he has brought meditation to me, and intentions and all of the woo woo stuff that I was like, what?
Doesn't work. Yeah,
But
but it
boy,
does.
it's like, yeah, we all like, I mean, they're goals. Everybody's like, what's my goal? Okay, my goal is to lose 20 pounds. Okay, great. What are the steps to get there?
Absolutely.
As and it's like, oh, okay, I understand that, rather than this arbitrary like goal, you
Right.
know.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So,
With a show like this, because I know that it's being directed or was directed by Juliet Jeffers.
mhm.
What is it like to have a personal story of yours that it is your story being directed by somebody else? Is that like, how does that feel? I guess.
Julia Jeffers is such a gem of a human. So she's a five-time solo artist herself. Juliet has a huge film and television career. And when I picked Juliet, I watched her, and it was something she was on, and I could tell when I was watching her that she had the emotion that I did, and you can only get that if you've lived a life. You know what I
Okay.
mean? And I was
Sure.
like, I'm gonna be safe with her, and I was. And Juliet made like the boundaries for me and let
Sure.
me do all the things in there. The hard head space, the what is this? This is garbage. This is all of this.
Sure.
And she kept me like 1 foot on the ground. And so Juliet is actually She just is filming in the Caribbean, her first short feature that she's directing. So she wasn't available for this. And so I brought in Lavinia Hart, who is a huge name in Detroit theater. And she was at Wayne State for a long time. I mean,
Okay.
just the arts with her are amazing. She resides in Los Angeles. Her daughter
Okay.
is Jamie Moyer, who is a huge Detroiter. We're all connected. Um, but Lavinia, I brought in this time for creative director, and Lavinia helped me play because that's what I needed to do again. I needed to
Okay.
play, and that's what she brought to me this time. So,
I like that they were able to kind of do different things. One gave you the structure in which for you to color, and now someone's telling you, here's how you play with the colors, and this is how
yeah.
what you do with it.
Yeah, and because Lavinia hadn't seen it before, and so she could look at it and go, "Hey, what if we changed this to the present tense?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, that makes sense." Whereas the first time I did it, I couldn't do those second drafts because it was still so fresh.
Sure.
Like, and now I could look at it with fresher eyes and go, "Yeah, let me clean that up. Let me do this." So, yeah.
One final question for you is just, what are you hoping audiences take away from Keepers?
Um, Keeper. You know, I think it's the message that I talked about before, that I sort of end the show with. Like, we can take care of ourselves and let go of these misbeliefs and these lies or whatever they are, whatever baggage we've been carrying around, you know, you can put that down. You know what I mean? And like, what does your day look like when you start doing that,
Sure.
And like that to me, like I fully anticipate like, seeing people after the show and like I'm always intrigued by what they're going to share. They're so vulnerable. And I'm like, "Oh, there's no boundaries here. My favorite."
uh, I mean, I fully anticipate crying my eyes out at this show. I can already feel it.
Oh boy. No
But like
pressure,
a
no
relief
pressure.
cry, like you're finally you can let some of that you can shed some of those tears of just all the, like you said, the stuff you were holding on to that you don't have to carry.
Yeah, I take care of, like it's hard to look back, at your 6-year-old self and go, what do they need? And what do they need now? And sometimes that's what I'll do is I'll like walk and be just, doing a quick line through. And I think about 6-year-old me and like, what does she need? You know what I mean? What can I give her, myself, and that to me just fuels me. I love that.
Well, thank you so much, Michelle, for your time, and we're so excited for this show. But thank you for speaking with us and taking time out of you just got in, so thanks.
You're the first.
Keeper
Thanks, Glenn.
arrives at Tipping Point Theater July 31st, sorry, and
Mhm.
runs through August 2nd. So get your tickets now and we will see you there.
Yay.